Welcome back to another exciting episode of Cyber Defense TV. I'm your host, Gary Malewski, and the publisher of Cyber Defense Magazine. Now, I have a very special guest sitting in the hot seat today from an amazing company that was acquired by another amazing company that split into two parts. We're going to learn about it. Larry Lunetta is the Vice President of Security Solutions Marketing at Aruba, which is part of HPE, which is Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. And that used to be part of Hewlett-Packard. Larry, welcome, and tell us how that all happened.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here. And it all happened several years ago as the behemoth that was known as HP was split into two major parts. One part, the laptops and printers, basically the consumer business, went off and is now called HP Inc., publicly held, very successful company in the consumer space. And the remainder of the company, which is focused on enterprise, became Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. And that now is the home of everything from servers to management software, hybrid cloud, and Aruba Networks, which is the leader in secure networking for the enterprise.
When you say the leader in secure networking for the enterprise, and it's still, we could go to aruba.com or hpe.com?
hpe.com and arubanetworks.com.
And arubanetworks.com. When you're the leader at that, we're talking about physical gear and software. Give us an example of the things we can leverage from Aruba Networks.
So it starts with access, and campus access, which is wireless access, device access like IoT access, out to the switching, to then go to the core and data center. So anything from the enterprise, from the edge to the data center, is what Aruba Networks covers from a physical perspective or connectivity perspective. And then from a management perspective, we have the gamut of network management and, of course, security software to protect it all.
Now, I never blame the victims of an exploit. It's a lesson for all of us. And most companies, they might fire the CISO and bring in the next one. And it's just crazy because we really can't blame the CISOs. We need to really educate our boards and management.
Right.
Do we have the right tools in place, et cetera? I want to go back to a story. There's many stories of breaches where I'm not going to blame the company, but I want to look at this scenario with you.
Yes.
One of the largest breaches in American history, 100 million credit cards, was TJ Maxx.
Yes.
And the hacker, the soup Nazi, was sitting in the parking lot of a Marshall's in Miami. And what he did was he eavesdropped on and found a common vulnerability and exposure in a Cisco wireless router. And that was used to talk to these barcode scanners so that the employees could scan inventory and get them in the database. Once he got into that wireless router, he was then able to worm his way into the Microsoft SQL Server. I got a copy of his chat logs. I actually wrote a story about it a while ago in our magazine. And he was talking to his friends saying, I'm in. Yes, I found that we're in the Microsoft SQL Server. Holy moly, look at this. It's unencrypted credit card data. We've got it. Let's just get as much as we can and move on.
Right.
100 million credit cards later. Nobody saw the breach. You don't find out until late. And then all these attorney generals got mad. The banks got mad. Who's going to print the new credit cards? Sadly, the victim, TJ Maxx, had to pay $225 million in damages.
Right.
How would you have saved them from that scenario with Aruba Networks?
So a couple things. Aruba, from its inception, and we go back 17 years to the early 2000s, has always made security a differentiator and an important part of our technology, which means that we don't just supply connectivity. We control that connectivity, and in fact, an award that you gave us just recently for our network access control is part of that control. We practice zero trust. So you cannot get on the network unless you legitimately authenticate with credentials that we recognize or is recognized in Active Directory, for example. And that means you cannot send a packet until we allow you to do that. And moreover, we allow the organization to provide policy-based segmentation. So even if the bad guy happens to get legitimate credentials, which does happen, you can restrict where that person can go and make sure that things like your SQL databases of credit cards are off limits from the casual or the compromised user. So that's sort of the basics. We do military-grade encryption on the traffic, so it can't be sniffed. We also have application layer firewalling built in our wireless controllers. We do.
In your wireless controllers?
That's correct.
I mean, it must have a heavy duty chipset and memory, or really smart programmers, or both.
Both.
That's phenomenal.
And we've had this for a long time. We do deep packet inspection. We have application awareness that allows you to write policies such that only a very few people can get to things like patient information, credit card information, et cetera. So we go a long way just with our infrastructure in keeping our customers more secure. And then on top of that, the other product you recognized, thank you very much, is a product called Introspect. So that is a product that uses machine learning, artificial intelligence, to look for behavioral anomalies. So let's say the bad person gets legitimate credentials, and all the other things that are built in to control that access look okay. But all of a sudden, that credential is going to places that they've never gone before, or the traffic is much larger than they've transacted. All of those things we can now find and pick up the attack before data starts to leave the organization. So this layers of defense, starting with the physical infrastructure all the way to AI, is what Aruba offers.
Is there anything Aruba's doing in this convergence, or what we call the, this digital transformation? Everyone's talking, move to the cloud,
Right.
move to IoT. It's all going to be amazing, but what I see is, speeds and feeds, and now we have a mess. Is there a way to secure that mess? Are you helping people in the cloud as well? Have you virtualized any of this technology? And are you looking at the next gen of this whole IoT nightmare?
It's a great point. You mentioned this whole idea of insight, knowing what's on your network. So that's where it all starts. You need to know what's on your network, and it's a particular problem with IoT. Because IoT devices typically do not have the authentication breadth that a user does, right? You can't do two-factor authentication and things like that. So you may be relying on a user ID and password set in some factory in the Far East, usually admin that's easily guessed and never changed, right? So you need to see what's on the network, and the challenge with IoT is that they don't have the same kind of profile that a laptop or a phone does. It's very difficult to differentiate, say in a medical environment, an MRI machine from a blood pump. They all wind up, when you scan them, looking like Windows machines.
Or a smart refrigerator that's being used to hold the blood and keep it safe. You don't
Exactly.
want that to shut off and get warm and ruin the blood.
Yes, so that's exactly the point. You need to understand what these devices are, and it turns out one of the only ways you can do that is, again, with machine learning, where you actually look at the behavior of the device to figure out what the fingerprint is, and then you can classify it, write the appropriate policies. You do not want to write a policy that takes that refrigerator off the network if you think it's compromised because of what's going to happen to the blood. So we wind up doing all this, and we do it from the cloud. So there is a definite trend towards putting, as you know, more and more security solutions in the cloud.
Are there videos, data sheets, white papers that we can find at arubanetworks.com?
Yes, you'll find them all over our website, and we certainly would appreciate folks coming there and take a look.
And in summary, this has been an awesome interview. You've made it through my hot seat, and I think you've educated our viewers, so I really want to thank you and our listeners on our radio channel.
I appreciate the opportunity, Gary. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
So check out his website. You've probably heard of him. And his website is hpe.com for the Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, or arubanetworks.com, which is really the heart of what we talk about, securing the network, whether it's from the inside or out or both. They have all the tools and technology to get it done. And then come back next time for an exciting episode of Cyber Defense TV.